Before I get started with today's video, I want to give a big shout out to Fat Mom Pokemon, the Motherland, as well as Mr. Dibs for their feedback on my prior long formatted Honkai Star Rail video. There's obviously a demand for this content, so I'm just going to keep making this as the time is appropriate for it. I have a cardboard cutout of Sunday here, and the reason for that is because I do not have him on my account. He serves one functionality here, and that is to be a walking punching bag. So let's go ahead and get into it. Yo, this is T.O.T. Thank you for dropping in today, if you have. Most content creators online, or even individuals just in general who choose to talk about Anomaly Arbitration, are typically going to approach it from the straightforward approach of the enemies hit too hard, they have too much HP, or there's not enough buff selection for characters to really work off of. These are going to be the most common talking points that are going to be brought up with Anomaly Arbitration. I'm not going to recover these points myself because you will hear these talking points from many other people online as the years go by. There is a sentiment, however, that I do want to take out the time to debunk because it is extremely concerning, and I personally find it to be the biggest problem with Anomaly Arbitration. It is the mentality that Anomaly Arbitration is the standard of performance in the game, and it doesn't matter if you get 3-star in MOC, Pure Fiction, or APOC Shadow. I 100% disagree with this sentiment. For starters, Anomaly Arbitration is an optional game mode. There are no Jades attached to it, and for the most part, you're mainly getting cosmetics out of it, a couple of resin makers, and then you're getting your dice. That's really it at the end of the day. If somebody was to never touch Anomaly Arbitration, they could still be pretty decent at the game. They could still be very well informed about the game. They could still be putting effort into their teams. It's content that's more there for the whales and leviathans than anything. And when I say the whales and leviathans, I'm mainly referring to the flight mode. But nonetheless, this game mode is optional, which I'm completely fine with. Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, and APOC Shadow will continue to be the performance standard for the game. And the reason why is because there are Jades attached to it. Now, for individuals who feel like these modes don't matter anymore and they're putting their focus on Anomaly Arbitration, if you as an individual set that standard for yourself, that's fine, but don't put that standard on other players. Another thing that I think is very important that I bring up is Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, and Apocalyptic Shadow may be very difficult to clear for somebody. We're all in different progression stages in our life. Now, yes, I 3-star Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, APOC Shadow. However, if there's a player that's on the up and up and they've been putting in the work, they put in the time, and they finally got their first 3-star in Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, Apocalyptic Shadow, assuming that they're a decent person, I'm still going to congratulate them. I'm not going to approach them with the energy of, oh, getting 3-star in these modes isn't a big deal, I've been doing it for a long time, or, oh, you got 3-star on Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, APOC Shadow, that doesn't matter, Anomaly Arbitration is the new thing. I feel like this is a very disheartening sentiment or mentality to have toward new players or even returning players. And again, we're all in different stages of our own progression. Let me give you a potential real life scenario. Let's say hypothetically person A and person B go to high school together. They stay in contact with each other after they've left high school. So 25 years down the line, person B had already had a kid. That said kid graduates from high school. Now, in normal circumstances, what person A is going to do is say something along the lines of, hey, your parent let me know that you graduated from high school recently. Big congrats to you. I remember back when I was in high school and I had all these kind of fun things, or maybe it wasn't that great, and it's an opportunity to maybe have some dialogue about your own personal high school experience. However, for the individual who has the mentality of Anomaly Arbitration is the new golden standard of performance in the game instead of Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, or APOC, how they would probably approach it with that said kid is something along the lines of, oh, you graduated from high school? Big deal. I already did that like 25 years ago and I got a house. Get on my level. You see how disheartening that kind of mentality would be? And maybe these individuals don't mean ill by it, but that's just how it comes across to me. Again, everyone is progressing through life at their own pace and at their own rates. Something else that I would like to bring up while I'm briefly talking about this topic, there are going to be challenges that individuals have getting their first MOC clear, their first Pure Fiction clear, their first APOC clear, that maybe you as an individual didn't have to experience when you went and got your first clear for those respective game modes. And it doesn't mean that your struggles are more significant or less significant than that other person. It's just you two might have had different struggles. For example, if you were getting a 3-star clear in Memory Chaos, Pure Fiction, APOC Shadow back in the day, well, there was less character characters to pick from. You didn't have to build as many characters, so it was a lot easier for you to lock into certain team archetypes and just go from there. For people that are on the up and up and they're going through 4.x right now, there's a way more selection in teams, which is good and also bad at the same time. It's good because if there's a particular playstyle that somebody doesn't like, they can just skip over it. However, there could end up being this aspect of decision paralysis, as in an individual might potentially get too overwhelmed by all the decisions and they may feel inclined to want to spread out their resources more than what they should. The more characters that get added into the game, to some extent, the more likely that that's going to happen, at least for newer players. Older players likely won't fall into that situation as much, not only because they have more hands-on experience, but because they already have a better chance of having established teams that can still clear the content, and or they choose to just vertically invest into. There is a saying about a rising tide rises all ships. I have no incentive to try to tear down any new players who are getting their Memory of Chaos 3-star clear for the first time, or APOC or Pure Fiction, especially if they've had a history of really struggling with that content. Again, we're all on different paths. We're all going through the game at our own pace. It doesn't serve me any benefit to try to diminish the accomplishments of other players. That's just me though. Later on in the video, I will briefly break down my thoughts on the recent Nova Flare announcement. One of the biggest advantages of single player games, or at least a lot of them anyways, is that they tend to have a definitive beginning, middle, and end. And also on top of that, these are games that you could typically knock out with anywhere from maybe 4 hours to 20 hours, just really depending. If you are the kind of individual who has a very busy lifestyle and you work a typical 30-40 hour work, you have family obligations, things along those lines, these games can be a blessing in disguise, especially if you can only squeeze in a couple of hours of gaming per week. But there is a downside to these kind of experiences. Once the game is finished and you put the game down, there ends up being this level of uncertainty in certain contexts. Sure, there are certain games to where an individual might walk away and say, hey, I'm very satisfied, I felt like this had a definitive ending, and they're completely content with that. However, there are games out there to where an individual may feel, hey, I really enjoyed this game, I look forward to seeing the next game in this series. And that's where the uncertainty comes into play. There is no guarantee that said game will get a sequel, and even if it does get a sequel, there's no promise on when it will particularly come out. And for the games that do get a sequel, there is the concern of, will the game be as enjoyable as the previous game that you played, which that may not always be the case. Let me give you a couple of examples of uncertainty. So Okami, arguably one of the best PlayStation 2 games that has came out ever, finally is going to be getting a sequel for the current gen consoles. This was announced back in I believe December of 2024. So you have to think about how much time gap that is. When Okami came out on the PlayStation 2, then there was no Okami on PlayStation 3, no Okami on PlayStation 4, and now there's going to be a sequel for the current gen consoles. That's a big time gap. Like, somebody could have literally started a family, started high school and finished it. So much stuff can happen in between that time gap. I'm just using that as an example. I'm gonna go ahead and give you another example. This applies to me personally. So after the God of War Greek saga was concluded, Santa Monica took a couple of years to kind of really overhaul the combat system and make a lot of changes to it. Hence came God of War 2018. Now, I've talked about this game on this channel in the past, but I'm just gonna give you like a short version of it. I didn't like the over-the-shoulder camera. I didn't like the axe, even though it was very functional. I hated Atreus, and I just hated that we couldn't jump in the game when we could do that in the Greek Saga God of War games. And while I did give credit to the Valkyrie fights, overall I just really didn't enjoy the game. Now I acknowledge that it's still a good game, and even Ragnarok is a good game, but I didn't even play Ragnarok because I found out that there was a whole hour segment with the players being forced to use Atreus. And it's no surprise to me that if people were to get a replay function of chapters that they could jump to, that would probably be a section that they would skip over the most often. The sentiment that I want to provide is when the game gets a sequel, there could be a lot of changes in the game that might be a huge turnoff for you as the individual. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and give another example. I started off playing Tekken 2 when I was a kid. I played Tekken 3, 5, and 6 very heavily. I played 4 a little bit on arcade, but not very much. I didn't end up owning Tekken 4 until much later on in life. And as far as Tekken 7, I didn't put a whole lot of time into it, and even though I will acknowledge that Tekken 7 did have very good gameplay and the main Mishima Saga storyline was done very well, I felt the type of way about the game because the game was very poor in its customization. It was very poor in its offline offerings as far as game modes, and also I felt like a good number of the characters not directly involved with the Mishimas, the storylines weren't really done all that well in my opinion. One of the biggest glaring ones for me personally was Eddie Gordo. Eddie Gordo was one of the characters that was a favorite of mine in the Tekken franchise. So in Tekken 6, there's this very serious ending where he's going to the graveyard of his master and Christy Montero is there with him. And then Tekken 7 came around. I was expecting there to be some kind of follow-up on this. Instead, there just ends up being this gag ending between him and Lucky Chloe. I was very infuriated about this. So I thought, okay, maybe Tekken 8 will be better. Maybe they'll get more serious about the storyline for everyone not directly involved with the Mishima Saga. Well, I never really got that far. So I found out that the game had chip damage, which was very high. So if you are a player who tends to play very defensively and you don't tend to press buttons very much, you could just lose so much of your health from chip damage. Now, chip damage was an optional thing in past Tekken games. However, this was forced as a default in Tekken 8. Also, they brought back Heihachi again, and I was just like, you can't even keep this guy dead for a single game before bringing him back. There was, in Tekken 7, they set up this whole big cinematic thing between him and Kazuha. They've had beef for literally decades, and I really thought Heihachi was dead. I was highly mistaken, and I thought to myself, what was the point of bringing Reina in as a Pasueto replacement for Heihachi if you were just going to turn around and bring Heihachi back in the literal same game? Another big problem with Tekken 8 is there were a lot of new moves added that would cover up a lot of prior weaknesses that the characters would have. So for example, let's say a character didn't have very good attack options for enemies moving sidestep right. Well, the developers just gave them moves that would cover for that weakness. Also, they nerfed the Korean backdash, which was basically a really good way to create a lot of distance between yourself and the enemy, which would increase the chances of your opponent whiffing, which would give you more opportunities to freely attack and get damage. That was nerfed. So essentially, season 3 comes around. There is an emphasis on this quote-unquote back to basics. So many players from casual level up to pros, they were under the assumption that there would be debuffs across the board. The heat mechanic would become less oppressive. So the heat mechanic is essentially very similar to the rage drive that was introduced in Tekken 7, to where characters would get access to an additional move. However, rage drive was way more balanced in Tekken 7 because this was only accessible in low health, whereas the heat mechanic, this is something that is accessible at any point during a particular fight. It tends to be very plus on frames, and it tends to be very, very oppressive. Essentially, you're in this lose-lose situation where if you press buttons, you can be screwed. If you don't press buttons, you can also be screwed. And what they essentially did is, even though there were some nerfs, they didn't really touch the heat system that much for these characters. And now, if you look online, as I literally making this video, there are dozens upon dozens of videos of people talking about how disappointed they are with Tekken 8 Season 3. There are numerous players talking about how they're going to quit because the developers don't listen to their feedback, things along those lines. It's an example of saying that whenever there is a new sequel, there could be mechanical changes to the game that just end up being a huge turnoff for you. It's going to be even worse if the developers decide not to take that feedback in because they choose to double down on what they want to do. I'm using Tekken 8 as an example because it's very recent, and this is a franchise that I've played throughout most of my life, but I didn't even pick up Tekken 8 to play at all. In fact, the way that Tekken 8's been handled, I literally sold my copy of Tekken 7. That's the downside with single player games. You never know if the game's even going to get a sequel, and even if it does, it may not be within a decent amount of time. And for the scenarios where a game is going to get a sequel, there's no guarantee that you're going to like the sequel. That is the reason why with single player games, the biggest con that comes with them is that level of uncertainty for certain multiplayer games. In the next segment, I'll briefly cover my thoughts on the pros and cons of MMOs.
combat. This is double speed.
I weep for the departed. It is the fall. I swear. Another journey. Your water.
Existence is me. Can I have fun this time? Found me. You wanna take a bet?
For bliss.
You can't run.
I weep for the departed. It is the fall.
Play session is over. With enough believers, lies become reality.
My experience with MMOs is very limited in comparison to a lot of other individuals out there. I started playing Last Chaos many years ago. Played that for a small duration of time. I transitioned into Decaron for a few years, and then after that, I played Blade and Soul for a few years. So I'd be more than happy to read your MMO experience, especially if you played some of the mainstream games such as World of Warcraft, Guild Wars / Guild Wars 2, or Final Fantasy 14, just to name some examples. One of the biggest strengths when it comes to MMOs is assuming that the MMO is performing very well. You have this ever-expanding world with an ever-expanding roster of characters, skills, classes, etc. So unlike with single-player games or multiplayer console-sided games where you're not 100% sure there's going to be another entry in that particular IP series, MMOs, once they have established themselves, they tend to stay for the long haul, normally, assuming that they're successful out the gate. Now, the one aspect about MMOs that is a gray area is actually the community. Now, a community for certain individuals can either make or break your gaming experience. Now, for the MMOs out there that tend to have a really good chill community, this can really heighten your gameplay enjoyment and you can end up with a lot of unique experiences. However, if you play a game with a community that tends to be very toxic, you can find yourself in various situations where there's a lot of frustration. I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of a non-toxic situation, but something that I've seen firsthand. So let's say hypothetically you're playing an MMO, you go into a group instance, and let's say you go to a boss. You wipe on the boss because you failed the mechanics. So you think to yourself, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and type out the mechanics. It's not really that complicated. So you type out the mechanics to the person who seems to be struggling with whatever role that they were assigned. So you find out not only does the person not listen to you, they wouldn't even be able to understand you anyways because they don't understand your native tongue. And let's say in this scenario, you're an English speaker, but they only know Spanish. So when you're doing these group instances, an issue that may end up being a common pop-up is language barriers. When it comes to doing group raid content, let's say you're part of a guild or something along those lines, you start running into issues of time zone differences. Maybe one of your members who's like the main tank, for example, ends up doing a no call, no show. So you are potentially scrambling trying to get another tank or hoping that somebody else in the team is going to be able to swap over to a tank for the boss, or you just end up canceling. There's obviously hacking issues which happen as well. That can happen in single player games or multiplayer games as well, but that is a commonality within certain MMOs also. Somebody starts hacking the game, they could really impede your enjoyment of the gaming experience. These are just a few examples. So community is really a gray area. I would say the one absolute biggest downside for MMOs for a lot of players as they get older is that a lot of these MMOs, not all of them, require a lot of time on a consistent basis, like multiple times a week, especially like the Eastern MMOs, like the Korean ones tend to be extraordinarily literally grind. I remember when I was playing Blade and Soul, for example, and I felt like if I wasn't playing that game 3 to 4 hours almost every single day, on top of spending hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars constantly, that I was going to get behind, and I would eventually fall behind. And it didn't help that a game like Blade and Soul eventually implemented regressive type systems where if you failed an upgrade on something, you would lose progression on that item in general. The prior game that I played to that, called Decaron, there was a plus system, and if you failed the plus on the item going from +6, +7, you would just completely lose the item altogether. You would have to start all the way over. Now they would have these items that you could use that would preserve the item, but it was mainly a cash shop locked item. So you're spending all this money trying to get something to +9. And sure, you could grind out the gold to buy it, but that would take a very long time in a lot of instances. I'm just using this as an example. When someone is a teenager or maybe a young adult, maybe they have all the time in the world to sit down and grind an MMO for 10 to 12 hours a day. But as you get older, the likelihood of that still being the case becomes less and less and less. And a lot of these MMOs, not all of them, are very demanding on time on a per day basis. And it's very easy to fall behind in some of these MMOs, especially certain Eastern ones. Now, maybe the Western ones are a little bit better, but I don't have experience with the Western MMOs. I don't want to paint an overgeneralizing blanket and assuming that the Western MMOs are just as grindy as the Eastern ones. Whenever an MMO goes into development, not only does it take a massive amount of time and a massive amount of resources, but there are so many things that can go wrong during the development. Let's say there was like a really cool ideal that somebody thought of at the time that would have been like revolutionary. Well, about time you go forward, like say 8, 9, maybe even 10 years, maybe it may not be such a revolutionary ideal and may be dated by that time. There was one particular MMO that I'm thinking of that actually got canceled, and that was called Ashes of Creation. I believe this game was originally revealed sometime back in 2016, and we found out that this project ended up being canceled. There were a decent number of people looking forward to this, and that's just a single example. As developers, it's extremely risky, and this is a reason why various companies have tried to go with the gacha route, because gacha games in comparison are way smaller in scale, they're way quicker to develop, and there tends to be a little bit less risk with them in comparison to creating an MMORPG. In the next segment, what I'll go ahead and do is I will explain why Honkai Star Rail has been able to avoid a good number of the pitfalls that are very common with a lot of single player and multiplayer games on the console front, as well as expressing how it's been able to avoid many of the pitfalls that are very common with a good number of MMOs out there. Honkai Star Rail, for the most part, is able to rip strengths from both extremes of the spectrum while being able to avoid most of the pitfalls, or at least be able to mitigate them. So when I look at single player and multiplayer games that people primarily are going to play on console, for example, Honkai Star Rail removes a lot of that uncertainty. You have a general idea how this game is going to be, you have a general idea of the direction that it's going to go in, and even if it does change into a certain direction that you might not like as a player, it tends to be more of a temporary thing instead of, oh, we're going to be stuck with this for literally years. So for example, in Honkai Star Rail, for players who might have not been the biggest fan of the Remembrance path, it got hard focused on for about a year, and obviously now we're moving into Elation. So if you're somebody who's more interested in Elation than Remembrance or vice versa, you don't have to worry about these things staying center stage for an overly extensive period of time, like say years as an example. Another strength that Honkai Star Rail pulls from these games is they're not demanding on time unless you want them to be. So you could sit down, play Honkai Star Rail for an hour or two, no different from a multiplayer game or maybe even a single player game, and feel like you made really good progress. You're not going to get that same experience in certain Eastern MMORPGs by comparison. For certain Eastern MMORPGs, if you're not putting in at least 3 to 4 hours a day consistently and or spending money on top of that, you are probably going to feel like you're falling behind. Again, a lot of Eastern MMORPGs out there tend to be extremely grindy. A strength that Honkai Star Rail rips from MMOs is you have this comfort of understanding that once the game is established as a successful product, you know that you're going to have updates for years to come. You don't have to really worry about, well, am I going to have to wait 10 years for an update or 15 years for an update? Unlike with certain single player games or certain multiplayer games, you know that there is going to be a schedule to where they're going to release so much new content at a particular point in time. Now, for MMOs, that may be every year or every other year, whereas with Honkai Star Rail, for the most part, they stay on a 6-week update schedule. One of the cons that is very common with a lot of MMOs, which is a toxic community, is almost completely avoidable with Honkai Star Rail outside of online discourse. When somebody logs into Honkai Star Rail, your progression is entirely based on the availability time that you have to play the game, as well as your own effort, merits, and the money that you want to put into your own account. So let's say hypothetically, I'm a toxic person. I could be the most toxic person online. I'm not going to have any kind of impediment on your progression on your account, essentially. Honkai Star Rail is far from a perfect game. While I am still able to personally enjoy the game, there's still aspects that I hope will get improved upon as time goes by.
In the abyss's revel, your cries rise. Thrashing and snapping, not what feel. Thank you. Every petal all will be swept away by the wind.
Good times. Time to say bye. Boom.
Don't let waves like this run.
Stand still.
Dragons soaring above the land. This is permanent.
Eternal.
My purpose is
With the recent Nova Flare announcement, I am just as baffled as a lot of other players out there, and I have no idea why Sam is here at this particular point in time. Constance just recently released in 3.8, who was a big performance improvement to Sam. Sam does not need any help performance-wise in the game currently. Now, with that being said, I'm not against Sam receiving a buff at some point, but this could have been saved for later on in the future, maybe towards the end of 4.x, maybe even going into 5.x. When I think of characters who are more worthy of a buff, I think of characters like Argenti and Young Lee as examples. This Nova Flare has basically confirmed to me that it doesn't matter if a character is underperforming or not. If MiHoYo wants to improve their performance, they will go ahead and do it, which is a shame because I thought the concept of Nova Flare was to help improve the performance of characters who have outdated kits and were underperforming at the same time. Like when Blade got his Nova Flare and him being able to have the aggro increase and making it more likely for enemies to attack him, I thought that was a great change. I welcome that change wholeheartedly. I'm not for sure what they're going to do with Welt. Either they're going to really double down on his DPS option, which I think is going to be a little bit boring in the aspect of we got plenty of DPSs in the game, or they're going to make him a sustaining monster to where he does complete lockdown on enemies to where they're not really able to attack your team a whole lot. That used to be a standout thing with Welt, but over time it got harder and harder for him to be able to do that. So if they go that route with Welt, I would personally be cool with that. We'll have to wait and see if he gets buffed in that function to where he could be used as a Pseudo sustain again. It'll be really interesting. And I guess depending on how they buff him, he could end up being a support for Acheron again, and only time's gonna tell. As far as Ho-Ho, I suspect what they will probably do with her is they will improve her healing, because I know Mr. Pokey complains about that a lot in the aspect of how she doesn't heal enough. She might potentially even give out more energy, and I'm also suspecting that her attack buff might get changed into a total damage multiplier buff, so that way she's not just stuck in attack scaling character team. You know, you could put her in a HP scaling team or a defense damage dealer scaling team in the future, things along those lines. We'll have to wait and see. And then as far as Sela goes, I would love to see her resurgence be able to proc regardless of who gets the enemy kill, because right now, once again, via Mr. Pokey's experience playing the character, if she attacks an enemy but the additional damage from, like I say, a Harmony character like say Tribby or Robin is what gets the kill, her resurgence won't even proc. So I would love to see that resurgence gets changed to where it will proc regardless of who gets the killing blow, and I would also like to see it be able to be procced multiple times in a row as well, maybe 5 times or something along those lines. I don't expect they're gonna buff her to the point to where she's gonna be better than Archer, but I think it would be okay for most players if she gets buffed to the point to where she's slightly weaker than Archer. That's of course just my opinion on these characters. We'll have to wait and see what happens later on in the future. If you had taken out the time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.
Johnson's Concert Choir.
Good times. Time to say bye. Boom.
Stand still. You can't run. Such noisy
Dragons soaring above the land. This is permanent!
You want to take advantage? Your prize rush! Found me!
May as well kill him all. Stand still.
Offer you a weapon. Think with us. You can't run!
Good time. Time to say bye. Go. Say bye to breathing.
My purpose is to protect. Dragons soaring above the land. This is permanent!
Don't fight so I can leave early.
Stand still.
Found me! Such the intoxicator! Amateur! In the existence level, your prize rush!
May as well kill him all. Good time. Time to say bye. Go.
A little grace too much for you.
Stand still.
Found me! Our cute play session is over. Collide that everyone believes in becomes a reality! Gotcha!
You guys give it up.
Betray me. Eternal knowledge. There'll be a way. Unite our goals. This is getting fun. Every petal.
All will be swept away by the wind.
The candle flickers in your breath. So beautiful! Like I'm taking everything. Burn to ashes! Dreams of a let us dance once more. Share good fortunes and last words. Grace and elegance. Eternal. Dream vanished. Beautiful.
All will be swept away by the wind.
Unite our goals. Some value, I suppose. Existence is human. Have we met? Dream vanished. Dreams of a past. Let us dance once more.
Initiate cleanup.
I'm so ready. Burn to ashes! This is my The candle flickers in your breath. So beautiful! There's more.
Every petal, all will be swept away by the wind.
No holding back. Cloud scatter. Is it coming?
Let's try it. Do it!
It's my turn, stars. Shine for the heroes.
Existence is of no consequence. Trust my will. Do anything!
Flowers, bloom for tomorrow. To get stars, shine for the heroes. Memories waiting to be woken up by a shooting star.